Hey, what's up? Today we're talking about 5 different techniques to get cinematic lighting on a low budget. So the first one, jumping right in, is taking advantage of your natural light and the practicals in your location. Now, this might seem pretty obvious, but I'm just gonna break down my thought process when I first enter a location to see what light it comes with and how I can maximize what it has to offer. Now, the first thing is natural light coming from the sun, since the sun is most likely going to be your brightest source of available light wherever you are, of course, if it's daytime. And using that to your advantage, whether how you're placing a subject maybe next to a window and how you strategize the blocking of that scene, it can really help to consider where the light is coming from, where the windows are, and sort of place the dance between the actors in a way where you are really taking advantage of that natural light coming in. Take a look at what else is around, what other practicals can elevate your scene, making it fit more of your story and what you're trying to communicate visually. And what I like to do is really take advantage of what the location has, like what unique lighting does it have, and highlighting that even more. So for example, in this documentary shot in Sicily a while back, I saw all these fluorescent tubes that were pretty dated with different color temperatures, and I really wanted to make that stand out. And the way I did this is by introducing a very small LED panel of a very warm color temperature, and then along with the color temperature of the camera and some post work, I was really able to really exaggerate that color contrast between the warmer key that I introduced and the overall ambient lighting coming from these overhead fluorescents. And so that gave this kind of greenish general look to the space, which added a lot of visual interest and made this interview more visually engaging. Now, another use of practicals is this work light, for example, in this tapestry shop, still from the same documentary. And because of the quality of the light bulb, because it was a very hard source, it actually really nicely edged the character and gave that separation to, again, add a little bit more dimension to your shot. Now, following that up, if you do have a light, especially a bright source, bouncing light can be extremely beneficial with a very limited setup. So for example, you can use the ceilings, which are typically of a lighter color or white, to bring back down a very diffused and ambient lighting just by even aiming a spotlight to the ceiling or even to that side wall or wherever you're trying to generate that bounce from. Now this is really powerful because you can open up a source to be much larger and much more diffused simply by bouncing it on a larger surface. And you can also create some interesting ambient tones and feels with just overall colors that you can apply to a spotlight that then bounces on a surface once again, and it creates this overall atmosphere that scatters all throughout your space. And then of course you can bring in other lights, other keys, other things that can make certain elements pop. And in this short film, that's exactly what I did. I added sort of like this greenish gel in front of this 120D that's very poorly hidden behind this pillar, and that created this overall ambient light that gave this scene a much grungier and kind of grim tone. So for number 3, let's actually go back and talk about practicals, because there's this really ingenious trick that my friend Kevin Terrell showed me and a bunch of other people in our lighting workshop just by using a tin can. So I'm actually gonna let him explain what it is, and I think you'll really enjoy this one.
This is a tin can I cut, looks like a mullet. It's been cut. I also added a little paper tape so you don't cut yourself. And then I took the top here and I sort of hammered it out. So this is really handy. So if I take my PBR here, I can pop it on the top. So obviously right away.
Oh, that's genius.
Yep. Great. So it takes the spill off the top and the sides. Go 100% on the dimmer. All right. It's blowing out. I like the background, let's say. That's not blowing out anymore. Bam!
So yeah, a great way to, again, get even more control out of household items, light bulbs, things that you can very easily find, and still just take it up a notch and make it just feel more cinematic. It's little details like this that really add that visual intrigue and really help you shape your scene. So another scenario with lower budget lighting is that sometimes you don't have big sources of light or really powerful lights, and to still get the look that you want, sometimes you have to bring in those lights pretty close. If it's a lockdown shot or a shot where you feel pretty comfortable, where later in post you can delete lights with a clean plate, this is a really effective trick to sometimes even use practicals and use whatever you have and still make it look great. So the main things to keep in mind is technique, is what are you trying to achieve with your lighting. When you have those ideas in the back of your mind, when you are executing, it doesn't matter what tools you have. You can get really close if you're creative and you're really taking advantage of everything that's available to you. So of course, having more control, bringing more lights, it's always going to produce better and stress-free results. But a lot of times with guerrilla filmmaking or just going out there and shooting, having that elasticity when it comes to being able to light something and make it look interesting, no matter what you have, is very important. And now finally, number 5, this applies to a lot of film school shoots. I remember being there in those very bland and boring and generic looking apartments and having to film something with your buddies that still looks interesting, and on camera it just doesn't look good. The lighting always looks wrong and flat. And of course, that's a very specific example, but anytime that you have a blank wall or just a background that's not very visually interesting, there's not art direction, it's just the wall. When you have situations like that, breaking it up with some interesting shadow patterns can really help the shot. So one example is, of course, doing it on set with even some cardboard and cutting up some shapes, or even bringing a branch from outside and putting it in front of a spotlight to kind of cast a little bit of a pattern, a little bit of a shadow that again breaks up that bland and even space that is behind your subject. And of course, this can be applied to a lot of different scenarios. Using shadows can even be a metaphor. There's a lot that you can even say through it. And again, when you're thinking of all these different visual elements, think about creative ways to incorporate your story here and there. The more that you sprinkle that throughout everything that you are doing and executing in your project, in your short film, the more that the audience will feel engaged and feel that realism. So I hope you enjoyed these quick lighting ideas on a lower budget. I hope they help. Let me know which ones are your favorite or which ones have saved you on a lower budget. Definitely want to hear your thoughts on that one, so comment it down below. Also, if you want to check out shadows that are not real that you can overlay in post, I do have a pack of a collection of shadows. That is what we call a segue. And yeah, we have a lot of packs, not just that one, on the marketplace over at Kriscoart. And I really think that if you are editing or trying to even elevate your cinematography with VFX and in post, these assets are really unique for that, and I personally use them all the time, so definitely check them out. I also launched a Patreon recently with a bunch of footage, also free footage that you can play with and experiment and learn from, so that is all available there. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching. My name is Chris Trini for Kriscoart, and I'll see you next time.